Hi there. Welcome to the Sober Circle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
Open to shoot and let it go. And that's what I'm going to do. Let me welcome my friend, John Carlton, from Chandler, Arizona. John.
Thank you very much, Willard. My name is John Carlton, and I'm an alcoholic. And by following the teachings and the philosophy of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous as I interpret it, assistance from a power greater than myself that I prefer to call God as I understand him, and of course, much help from folks such as you, and some effort upon my part, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous tonight, and I'm not going to tell you when my birthday is. I will before I get done, though. This is a good deal like a homecoming to me. I was in the fellowship some 19 and a half years before I spoke anywhere outside of the confines of Texas, because my sponsor, Dick Breen, told me that if I found a way to stay sober, not to let anyone change it, and I found a way to stay sober within the confines of the various groups, but somehow or another they got hold of Dick, and Dick said, I want you to go over to Carlton, South Carolina, to the Southeastern Conference. I know that bunch of guys and gals over there, and they're great folks. And he said that Ruth, his wife, and he spoke at the first conference in Birmingham that you folks put on. But I evidently didn't make too much of an impression, because it's taken them 7 years to invite me back. You know, when I told my secretary that I was coming over here, she said, tell me, John, when you speak to large audiences, speak to them, you know. Don't you get nervous? Now, I assure you that I'm not a bit nervous tonight, because I know pretty well what I'm going to say, while you folks out there, most of you, haven't got any idea what you're going to hear. So, if it's anybody to be nervous, it's you. And I would like to make a couple of observations before I start to say anything. Whatever that I may say tonight is my own opinion. I don't speak for Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. No one does that. And I recognize your prerogative to disagree with me. We can disagree without being disagreeable. And by the same token, it's my prerogative to say whatever that I wish, so long as I stay within the perimeter of the AA program. Now, if I should say something that might step on any of your toes, I do not say that with any maliciousness whatever. Not that I give a damn whether I do or not, but because I'm getting out of here very early in the morning, and none of you know where I'm staying anyway. But the presence of you folks here tonight is a true indication of your loyalty to the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this beautiful gathering, in what Bill liked to refer to as the Cathedral of the Spirit, I like to refer to it as the God-given canopy of Alcoholics Anonymous. But what has made it possible for us to be here tonight, in my opinion, is the communion of two men. A little fellow by the name of Ebby Thatcher, who had something in his heart that he wanted to give to his pal Bill on a November night in 1934. And if you wish to see, if you've got interest enough to read the big book again, you read Bill's story and you will see the contribution that this little fella made to our program. I knew Ebby personally and spent a great deal of time on the ranch owned by a very good friend of Freeman Wise and I in Sonora, Texas. I came to know Ebby very well. And I'd like to remind you that he and Bill stayed sober some 6.5 months before Bill went to Akron, when he met Dr. Bob. But never at any time did I ever hear Ebby lay claim to having any part of the formation of Alcoholics Anonymous, regardless of what you may have heard. I did hear him say this: we stayed sober 6.5 months, and Bill went on to Akron and met Dr. Bob, and Dr. Bob and Bill went on, and AA was formed. But it all started on that November night in 1934, when Ebby had been sober 6.5 weeks, and Bill was drinking that night. And that's why that I recognize Ebby. If there ever was a man who came to scoff but remained to pray, you're looking at him. I wanted no part of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I wanted no part of anyone in it either. I was altogether too well educated. I had been accepted too well socially. And after all, I was a successful attorney. And I could talk to you here tonight as a former professional fighter. I earned my education, as many of you know, was a professional fighter for 5.5 years. Fell around the coast, and I were the only two legitimate students at that time that was earning an education that way. Some of my friends think I stayed in there a little too long, I guess. And when Keith was talking about training, my God. Yeah. But it was a little different in those days. I had never taken a drink of booze in my life, and I had never smoked. I trained religiously. And I never took a drink until I was admitted to the practice of law. And there was a drink of champagne. And I enjoyed it, and I got along very nicely and very well. But then, for some reason or another, I hear all kinds of theories about alcoholism. And I've heard people say, I was an alcoholic from the time I was born, or this and that. So far as I'm concerned, I became an alcoholic because I drank too much booze too often. That's good enough for me. And I'm not interested in whether or not you was kicked in the head when you was 3 years old by an angleworm. But I became an alcoholic because I no longer could control it. And it began to divert me from my normal way of living and obstruct my objective. And if any of you here got any doubts whether or not you are, and I don't care when you drink, who you drink with, when you drink, or how much, if it diverts you from your normal way of living and obstructs your objective, you better look at your whole card because you're in trouble. I don't know whether you're an alcoholic or not. But because of my refusal to listen to people who knew that alcohol was causing me much trouble and wanted to help me, I refused, as I say, to listen to them, and as a result, I was forced to stand on the curbstone of life and watch the throng pass me by during the most lucrative and productive years of my career. But one of the great reasons I believe that made it so difficult for me was my ego. I dripped with it. Until a fellow in this deal called Alcoholics Anonymous said to me one time, "Johnny, do you know what egotism is, the real definition?" And I said, "No, I guess not." He said, "It's the best anesthetic to help lessen the pain of stupidity." But because of this, I became a thief. I became a thief. I stole from those that I loved the most their right to happiness. I've heard people say, "I've been sober X number of years, but I realize I still have a drinking problem." Well, I don't buy that either. Every single one of you members of Alcoholics Anonymous who sit here tonight sober, and God bless that little fellow with a year, I'd like to say to him, I had to have a year once. October 28th, I'll have 27 of them. But we hear them say, "I'll have a drinking problem until I die." I don't buy it. Our problem as we sit here is how do we handle our sobriety? If that was full of booze, there isn't one of us here that don't know what the results would be if we drank it. And so long as we handle our sobriety in a way that has been laid out to us in plain cowboy language in the big book, we are not going to reach for that drink. As Dr. Bob once said, let us not louse this up with Freudian complexes that may be interesting to the scientific mind, but has very little to do with our work in AA. The 12 steps, when simmered down, resolves themselves into two things: love and service. And we all know what love is, and we all know what service is. To me, this deal is as simple as ABC: accept, begin, and continue. And if we hold on to three things: the God of our understanding, the truth about ourselves, namely we cannot take one drink, and hold on to our AA friends, we will hold on to total abstinence. And that's the name of this game. Of course, there's misunderstandings, and we misinterpret, and sometimes we really don't understand. You heard my pal Al here today. I know he's acquainted with the story, and he may know the priest. I don't know. But this priest had a woman who took care of the house, was housekeeper. She hadn't been with him very long, and she wanted to do a good job. And one morning she came in and she said, "Father, you should do something about your tablecloth. You inadvertently burned a hole in it, and the bishop is coming for lunch Saturday, you know." He said, "Elizabeth, now I have told you repeatedly, young lady, it is not my tablecloth. It is our tablecloth. Everything in this house, it's ours. I own nothing." And she went on. The next day she came in and she said, "Father, I just like to call this to your attention, but the curtains in the living room are soiled, and you should get some more for yourself because you know the bishop will be here Saturday." Well, again he said, "Now, Elizabeth, I have explained to you that everything in this household is ours. I own nothing. Please remember that." And with that she left. And the bishop came Saturday morning, and Elizabeth was working around, and all of a sudden this ungodly scream comes from the bedroom. And the bishop and the priest hurries down to the room, and they look in there, and here's Elizabeth standing up on a chair. And the priest says, "Elizabeth, what is the matter?" She says, "Father, there's a mouse under our bed." Making progress every day. We're making progress in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's slow sometimes and it's discouraging sometimes. But we have made progress in all facets. We put men on the moon and brought them back, taken them off the ocean. Now, Betty and Keith, some of us Irishmen can eat meat on Friday. Maybe our Jewish neighbors will be enjoying ham and pork before too long, and who the hell knows, maybe the Baptists will start taking a drink in front of one another. Our living does not depend on what life brings to us. And I've got a pal here tonight that bears this out, my pal Carl from New Orleans. It's not what life brings to us, but it is how our mind reacts to what has happened. And in the lives of every one of us alcoholics, because of our excessive drinking, our lives have been colored. Some more than others. But from the days that we got into the program, and I remind you there's a difference of being in the program and on the program. But from the day that we once decided that we were in the program, we were given a mind which enables us to choose what that color will be from here on out. We have a choice of either living the life of a palace or the life of the pigsty. It don't make any difference. That's up to you. The length of time that it takes to change the direction of a man or a woman's life is the same length of time that it takes to change an idea. It took me a long time to change the idea that I could handle booze. Some very quickly. And some of you have heard me tell this story because it's an old story, but if you haven't heard it, it's not old. And this is such a case in point. This is a case in point of an individual changing their minds very quickly. Husband's expecting his wife to have a baby any minute, and he's walking up and down in the maternity ward in the sister's hospital. The Mother Superior noticed him, and she walks over and she said, "Take it easy, young man. All of you husbands act the same when your wives are having a first baby." He said, "But sister, this isn't the first one. This is the 10th one." "Oh," she says, "glory be to God. Isn't it a wonderful thing raising a nice big Irish Catholic family?" He says, "But sister, I'm not a Catholic. I'm a Protestant." "Oh," she says, and with that she turned on her heel and started down the ward, met a little nun that had just joined the staff that afternoon, called her over and said, "Sister, keep your eye on that tall guy up there. He's a sex maniac." I told you that I wanted no part of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm not going into any morbid details of my drinking or giving any Howard Cosell description of my actions. But I will qualify perhaps a little so you won't be laboring under any misapprehensions. So I told you, I never took a drink of booze in my life until I was 26 years of age, and never smoked, never used tea or coffee. I'm going to shorten this up because when I was here 7 years ago, they told me we were going to take a moonlight sail, and I heard the High Lama there, Dave Cook, announce that you're going to dance at 10 o'clock, so I'm not going into very lengthy detail. You know, I started to read the story of Jack Alexander like someone else said they did. Yeah. But they weren't talking about a senior member of a law firm. They were not talking about a fellow who had been a special assistant to the United States Attorney General in the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice. And they was not talking about, Jack Alexander was not talking about the personal representative of one of our vice presidents of the United States the last 2 years that he was in Washington. He was talking about the fellows in the mission houses and in the Sally spots, the fellows off the wharf and off the road. So what did I want to bother to finish that? And I tossed it one side. And I kept on with that feeling that when I got ready to quit, I could quit. I was big and strong, and when I got ready, I would do it. So I kept on drinking 10 more years. I married a very beautiful girl. And I've heard guys get up here and say, "Oh, my wife and I had difficulties with this or that, and if it hadn't been for her," you'll hear them whine around these clubs, you know. Well, I'm not going to do that. The only thing I can say is that she should have left me years before she did. She did everything in the world for me, and she was a magnificent mother, too. But ladies and gentlemen, in spite of my 2 degrees there, and that's something else. I was at Vanderbilt University and graduated from Boston University Law School, and a couple of years in the Harvard Graduate School, and I was coaching over there. And I had these 2 degrees. I've got a lot of pals who've got more than that. But I think when you get hold of one of these intelligentsias, they're the toughest nuts to crack in the world when it comes to trying to point out to them what booze is doing to them. I've had them tell me, "Well, I'm a PhD. Well, hell, that's piled high and deeper so far as I'm concerned. As I once said, my LLB, a lousy lying bum, that's all I wound up to be. And of course, we all know what Bachelor of Science initials stand for, BS. But I get sick and tired of hearing this now, our expanded educational program. Don't take a drink, you bum, and go to meetings, you'll get a chance. That's the way I feel about it. But no, we got to have theories now. Yes, we have theories about the alcoholic. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you can take, what those degrees might mean to getting a way in which to stay sober. And I'd like to remind you that they've got degrees on thermometers in these hospitals around here, a hell of a lot more degrees than you've got, and you know sometimes where they put those thermometers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I walked out of my state, and I'm not proud to stand here and tell you that I became a bum. And I'm not proud to stand here and tell you that I sought succor and maintenance from exactly the same places that Jack Alexander was talking about that I didn't have time to read. And I'm going to say to you this, you don't have to be a baby to cry. Because many a night during the 6.5 years that I traveled under an assumed name, nobody knew who I was or where I was. Many a night I walked and I cried. In spite of being an ex-Marine in World War II, not the Spanish-American, but the World War II, I've seen some pretty tough guys. And as I told you, I was in a profession where there were some pretty tough fellas. But I wanted to go home and see my little boy and see my wife. And I couldn't. And I kept walking. Until 6.5 years. And I finally got back to the state of Maine. Got back where that I had owned my own home, and I would like to remind you that money may build a house, but money will not build a home. And our summer place on Penobscot Bay. And in this very same courtroom where I had tried many and many a major case, where I had been looked at with respect, I stood in a courtroom after asking an acquaintance if he would try to get custody of Johnny 30 days for me. I heard a judge say, no, he's neither physically nor mentally capable of having custody of his son 30 minutes to say anything of 30 days. Of course, he was right. There I stood there before him, needing a shave, shaking. I hadn't had any sneaky Pete or Sweet Lucy that morning. I had long been relegated from the bourbon set. I'd had no smoke or any bay horse, and I'm shaking, standing in a pair of shoes that I could step on a chew of gum and tell you what flavor it was, asking for custody of my son. Of course he was right, but I'm going to tell you, it was a terrible way for the final curtain to come down on a legal career. And I swore that day I never would step inside of a courtroom again unless I was taken in. And I didn't. For some 18 years when I went into a courtroom to help the father of 5 children who was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I walked again, and I'm walking along the street in Portland, Maine. And I don't know where this fella came from. I didn't see him coming. And it was on an October night, October 28th, and it's misting and it's cold. And this fella came up and he extended his hand to me and he said, "Hello, Johnny, how are you? Where you going?" Now I figured he was the fuzz or the cops. Because I had been picked up many and many and many a time for drunken, disturbing the peace of whatnot. And I figured I was bagged again. But he extended his hand to me. And I answered him, honestly, I said, "I don't know," because I didn't care where I was going. And he said, "Come on with me. There's a bunch of guys that know you and they'd love to see you." And I figured, now I know I'm in. Who wanted to see me? Hadn't been around for 6.5 years, a drunken bum. That's what they were talking, saying, "Isn't it a shame? John's a nice fella. He's now a drunken bum and he's going to die drunk." Yeah. So I went with this fella. But we don't go to the jail, we get on an elevator, and on the elevator I'm the first one to speak, and I said, "Where are we going?" And he said, "Up to the Alcoholics Anonymous Club." Now what do you think was the first thing that hit this very brilliant mind? Great, I'll grab one of those suckers. I'll take the measurement enough for a bottle of Sneaky Pete or Sweet Lucy. Good. And I get in that place, and they were glad to see me, and every son of a gun extended their hand to me and said, "Come on in, Johnny. Glad to see you." Didn't ask me where I'd been. No. Come on in. Now I figure I got to grab one of them. That's the way I came into this deal. First I thought I was pinched, and when I found out I wasn't, I was coming in to put the bite on you. I didn't want any part of you. Now I can't, nobody is coming up with a drink. I see this crescent-shaped deal in the back of the room, and finally I give them that old act, you know. We're talking and they're nice and they're fine, but nobody is coming up with anything. So I give them this, you know. Sure. And, you know, it worked. The guy said, "By the way, Johnny, would you like to drink something?" And I said, "Oh, you bet." And waltzed me up to that bar, and I'm expecting him to come out with a cannon and put it up there and pour one for the great Carlton. I never drank so much coffee before or since. Always 2 steps ahead of you. But I'll tell you something else. I've never had a drink of booze since that time either. And that was October 28th in 1951. Thanks to you people. Now I've heard some of the guys say, and some of you gals too, I remember the dance. I've heard some of you guys and some of you gals too say, "Oh, when I came into after I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, a great weight was lifted from my shoulders. Oh, everything is fine." Well, that's good. And I'm sincere. That's good. But it just didn't happen to work that way with me. Now, this night, that I'm in this AA club in Portland, Maine. They have a meeting. Oh, Jesus, and I got to sit through that meeting. And I did. I don't remember anything about it, can't think about it. But there was a guy who said to me, he was a longshoreman. And he said, Johnny, in the morning I'm going to Texas. I'd like to have you ride with me. And I said, right. He said, you're going to the Baffin land. It was all right. I didn't make any difference. I'm on the bum. I'm on the Hummer. So I said, fine. I don't have a dime, but so come on. I want you to ride with me. Now, the last time that I was in Texas, in 1938, I was a house guest of that great fellow, John Nanscana. And this time I came to Texas riding in a panel truck sitting on an orange crate for a seat. Quite a come down. But still with my degrees. Now, if you think for a minute that you have been sick, you want a cold turkey, what I was cold turkeying, what I call Sneaky Pete and Sweet Lucy's wine, you know, of the cheapest sort. Smoke, bay husk, anything that was drinkable. My God, I'd take one of those Mickeys, you know, and shake it up, you know, with that denatured in there. Maybe come out of a radiator. I'm not fooling you. I'm not exaggerating. Shake it up, take you some, boom, and up that smoke would go. And what would be left, put some orange in it and down it. And then, Christ, a jackrabbit would walk up and spit in a bulldog's face, you know. Now, I'm sick. Oh, we'll laugh now. And believe it or not, I don't know what in the hell Tom Judgemore could find up there in Paducah. I'm going up in there sometime to find out where he lives. But we come over in his territory, come over those mountains of Tennessee, now long before it was blacktopped. And we got a blanket in the back of the car. Back of the truck, the car. Like Keith spoke of, about to wire it up, you know. Now, he'd been in AA 2 years, which I didn't believe because nobody stayed sober that long. And we're out about 3 days and not drink one. Just stop long enough to get, he'd drink some coffee or something. I couldn't drink it, I couldn't eat. Of course. And bouncing in that truck, you know. And my old pump is going, boom, you know, boom, boom, boom. And I'm beginning to see some faces up in the clouds. And I want to be a tough guy. He knew I was an ex-fighter, and he knew I was an ex-Marine, and I'm trying to be tough. And finally I quit. And I went up to him. I was lying down, trying to lie down, rolling around down. And I said, Johnny, I'm going to die. I got to have a drink. I'm going to die. Now, I had heard enough about this sweet and light and all these nice guys in AA, you know, and how considerate, and how great fellas. But I'll show you how great this guy was, and he'd been sober 2 years. Somewhere along the line was a longshoreman. Someone had hit him right in the mouth and the nose with one of those belaying pins, and he had a worse nose than mine. And as a result, and I'm not casting any reflection, but as a result of this injury, now I'm listening. And I said, when I said I'm going to die, and I'm serious, I thought it was. I said, Johnny, I'm going to die. I got to have a drink. And that sweet, lovable AA said to me, you're going to die, huh? Well, go ahead and die. What the hell good are you? You're no good to yourself or anybody else. I don't see anybody laying along the side of the road here. So if you croak, I'll drop you off at the next town, Serenity. Oh, those sweet AAs, yeah. And then we get into Dallas about 5 days later. And a Sunday morning, and we go into this parking lot, and he gets out of that truck, and he goes right straight to a cop. And I thought, oh, no. Now, that's something else, too, I'd like to call to your attention. I've heard some of the guys say, well, you know, before I come into AA, I never liked cops. But since I've been in AA, I've learned to love them. Well, I got some news for you. I'll have to be in here a hell of a lot longer than 27 years before I learn to love you. But this guy was a nice feller, and he said, yes, there's a meeting right up the street. They have a meeting there every Sunday morning. And I went up there with Johnny, and it was standing room only. And God acts in many mysterious ways. There was a fellow standing there, well dressed, as seemed to be the boss of the joint. And when he closed that meeting, he came as straight as an arrow is shot from a bow. Talk about God acting in many mysterious ways. We often spoke of it during his lifetime. And he extended exactly that same hand of kindness and consideration that was extended to me 2,640 miles away. And by God, I don't care when they come through the door of your group, wherever state you're from, how big or how little your group is. If that guy or that gal comes through that door and they think that this is a Lonely Hearts Club or an employment agency, or they think that they're coming in to make a touch like I did, if he or she is an alcoholic, for God's sakes, I plead with you, extend that hand of kindness and consideration that was extended to me nearly 27 years ago. That's our obligation to Dr. Bob and Phil. And I don't care if they come from the county jail or the country club or from across the tracks or the best residential section of the town. It don't make one bit of difference. I've had guys come in. This actually happened. A fellow came to me one time just before a meeting started, and he said, look, John Peters out there, and he's drunk, and he wants to come in. I said, well, what the hell? Let him in. Where else are you going to send him? The jail? Well, he said, what happens? What happens? He's drunk. I said, I don't care if you bring him in feet first. Sit him down over there, and if he keeps quiet, fine. If he tries to break up the joint, throw him the hell out with love, of course, but throw him out, he'll be back. Well, he's drunk, and we let him in. Jim Calcutta's wanted in the front region.
Urgent.
What is it? Urgent? Oh, urgent. I can't read it.
Jim Calcutt.
What?
Jim Calcutt. Wanted in the front. Urgent.
I don't care how you bring him into this deal. Drunk or sober or upside down. But get him in here. It might be a life that's saved. And that's what we're in here for. There are dangers that hang over Alcoholics Anonymous. And whether you like to hear it or not, as we sit in this beautiful gathering, and as I sat in Akron a short time ago, and in Canada, and various places, this is just the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. AA is still out there. We'd like to have, I know this, just like when we used to drink. I wish this thing could go on for days more, but it can't. We're going out, we're going home. And that's where AA is. It's out there. But I'm going to tell you, in my travels at least, and I've got to be honest with you, this idea of being flowery, I probably could use a lot of double-barrel words, but the hell with it. I want to talk to you as one drunk talking to another. There are three dangers that hang over this great fellowship. One is placing personalities ahead of AA principles. The other is complacency. And the third is some of these clowns that want to modify the program. Placing personalities ahead of AA principles, I must tell you, this is an actual story. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the stage wasn't as big as this, but on the platform, the podium, we were just standing there waiting for the meeting to start. And this lady comes up, and she said, John, you know, we're having trouble here. And I said, oh, what's the trouble, dear? She says, altogether too much placing personalities ahead of AA principles, and it's affecting our group, and she really gave it to me. I didn't belong to the group. I was invited there to talk. And I'm trying to get rid of her, because after 21 years as a trial lawyer, and you have a woman on that witness stand, you get around and off there, you know, as quickly and gracefully as possible. You don't hang around with them. So I'm being nice, you know, yeah, and she's giving it to me. And just about that time, a lady comes down the side, and some people were keeping a seat for her over there, like over here. And she came by beautifully dressed. Very fine appearing lady. And she went by, you know, and hello, and I bowed, and of course as she went, she had a great pair of wheels on her, and I took a look, you know. What the hell, I still can look at them. And I guess this old dame saw me, you know. And she says, John, do you know her? And I said, no, I don't, but she's a very fine appearing lady, isn't she? She says, her problem isn't alcohol. She said, her problem is sex. Well, I said, I wish to hell that was my problem sometimes. When I mention complacency and this, I mean from the bottom of my heart. And I'm not talking about my pal that you just introduced for 31 years, like this guy sitting here, like Dave and any of the rest of you fellows who are here with 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Now, I'm not talking about you, and I'm not talking about the younger members. But I'm talking about this bunch that now that they've got the mortgage paid off, got the wrinkles out of their stomach, got the wives and the family back, and got their business going, and you meet them on the street and you say to them, oh, Joe, I'm glad to run into you. Look, we got a bunch of new fellas and gals down at the group. We haven't seen you for 3 or 4 years. God, we'd like to have you come down and give us a hand. And here's the shot they'll give you. I got it. Well, you know what? I want you to know that I appreciate everything that AA has done for me. But he said, now, you know, when I get home and I'm so busy, you know, sometimes I have to mow the lawn and I'm tired. And besides, Helen gave me a new recliner for my birthday. And he said, you know, by golly, what the hell is it? Smoke pipe, gun smoke? Well, gun smoke comes on, and something like one of these other pictures, you know, and I just like to, you know, relax. But remember, I'm grateful. Now, if you need a couple of bucks, you know, put it in the kitty down there. Grateful, huh? Is that so? Well, now, if their idea of appreciation and their idea of gratefulness, after they have found, I know, where and how that they got their sobriety, and how that they've got the wrinkles out of their belly and got things leveled up and everything going now, and they turn their backs on the guys and gals that they've left behind them and the guys and gals out in the street, to hell with them. I don't care if they never come back. I hope that this never... Oh, yes, and this other thing, this modification, if you please. Yes. Yes. I hope the time never comes. I hope that I never live long enough to ever see one word deleted, anything taken from it, modified in any way from this right here that saved my life. Who the hell do they think they are? Going to modify it. That'll be, I hope, enough of some of us guys, some of you younger ones and some of us others, to stand up and be counted. They tried it once and they didn't get very far with it. Now, this is not a showcase for the contented alcoholic. This is still a haven for that suffering alcoholic. And if anybody thinks that they're coming into AA or getting up behind this podium for personal ambition, they're nuts. You heard some dedicated folks here during this conference. And I mean dedicated folks, and I couldn't help but think of the last clause in my sponsor's will. He passed away when he was 30. He's been 30 years sober. Some of you old-timers know Dick. And we had a devil of a time getting him to leave a will. He said, I am going to take it out and burn it up, and in case anything happens to me. I never did know why that he wanted to make one more trip. We had planned to make a trip to New York. He wanted to see Lois and Nell Wing for some reason, and I never did know why. I told Lois that in Akron when we had a talk there. So finally I got him to let me write something out for him. I mention this to point out dedication. And I showed it to him and I said, I'm going out and have a drink, coffee or something with the boys. 5 or 6 of the guys were there. They knew that I was taking Dick to the hospital that afternoon. And grown men were crying, too. They loved the guy. Tough as a boot, but a heart as big as a mountain. And I said, Dick, when I'll go on up for a few minutes, you take a look at that, and if anything you want changed, like, oh, Abbott, you just say so. And I came back in, and he said, that's all right. He said, would this sound too corny, Johnny? And I said, nothing is corny in a will, Dick. And this is the last paragraph. There are only 3 or 4 paragraphs to it. Remember, who had been sober 30 years, couldn't have anything materially, but he had folks like you. And this is what Dick said. To the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I leave my love and my affection for the kindness and the consideration that they have given to me over the years. It is my last wish and desire that the members of Alcoholics Anonymous continue to try to carry the message to that still suffering alcoholic. My God, I hope when I go out that I have just a fraction of that dedication. Now, we hear guys say, "Oh no, don't. We can't go call on him. He's not ready yet." Who am I to be the judge, jury, and executioner of my sick brother or sister? And I'm going to tell you, I'm in a swanky joint, I shouldn't say joint, swanky club there in Dallas, this happened. And the secretary come out, and she said, "I have a 12-step call here, and there's 5 or 6 guys around there waiting around and sitting around, and I'm waiting for the plane. I stop off there between planes. Would one of you go on this call?" And this mental AA giant, and he happened to be a retired Marine Corps major, and I didn't like the bum anyway. He speaks up and he says, "Who called? Did he call?" She said, "No, I don't know who called. I don't know whether his wife or sister or mother or daughter. I don't know who called." "Well," he said, "he isn't sick enough yet. Wait till he calls. We don't go on it." Did Abby Thatcher wait for Bill Wilson to call? Did Bill Wilson wait for Dr. Bob to call? Did Dr. Bob and Bill wait for Bill Dodson to call? Of course they didn't. Who called? And where the hell these water walkers have all come from all of a sudden, I don't know either. You come over to my church. Don't you go with that boy. Sir, I go. You get drunk, you do. My church is better than your church. Why? That's like saying which is better, exhale or inhale. We're all children of God, I hope. Now, you close that. Oh, geez, I don't know where. Yeah. One dame told me, she said, "I took the 5th step with 5 of those young people. I think 3 of them got pregnant for all." Listen, I didn't come in this deal, and if that dame is here, I don't know where she is, God bless you, that had the piece in the grapevine, it come from down in the southeast here. I was quoted with what I'm going to say now because that's all I know. So if you're here, honey, you've got another shot at it. I didn't come in this deal to get saved. There's guys like Al and the rabbis and ministers, and men highly qualified to do the saving. I come in this deal to find a way to change my lifestyle that I was living. I came in here to find a way to live a different kind of life. And when I come in this group, or your group, or any other group, and I'm sober and I leave sober, where I go and what I do and who I do it with, as long as it doesn't hurt Alcoholics Anonymous, that's none of your business. And by the same token, where you go and what you do and who you do it with, as long as you don't hurt the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, is none of John Carlton's business, and I'm not going to stick my nose in it either. And I want to remind any water walkers, if you're here, that it's only 6 inches from a halo to a noose. And don't you forget it. I wanted no part of God, even though I had a fine religious background. Those 6.5 years, don't mention God to me. I know what it is to be an unbeliever. And I know what it is if you think you can believe and defy at the same time. No. If someone should have a little trouble with the spiritual aspects of this program, just take the first letter of these 3 words. Good, orderly direction. And you'll find God. Don't worry about it. You'll find Him. good, orderly direction. You'll find them. I wanted no part of it. No. And it was you folks who brought me back into a life of reasonable contentment and reasonable happiness. I have a great family now. I have an Irish setter who is stone blind, but a beautiful thing. And I have my bionic cat. It cost me $35 to get her taken care of so I can run on. And myself. But I have enjoyed living. But you can't believe and defy. No. And make this deal. We've got, and they say, oh, you can't do this. Well, you better keep God at the steering wheel and stop using him for a spare tire. It don't work. I'm a great believer in prayer now. Because through you and others like you, he's been awfully good to me. Now, I really don't like to say this, but sometimes you know what the hell to say. You heard me mention my wife. She never believed that. She never remarried, and neither did I. And I'm not telling you any tearjerker or any of that business, but I want to point out to you that God acts in many mysterious ways. I would go home to Maine about every summer or every 2 years to see Polly and Johnny. And I'd go down to the summer place. And I did that for 12 years. And I did it then for 3 more. In the 15th year, while walking toward the ocean, the cottage was at Belfast, Maine, on Penobscot Bay. And for the first time in 15 years, she put her arm around my back. And I put my arm around hers, too. And as we walked toward the ocean, she said to me, Johnny, if anything ever happens to me, will you take care of Johnny? And I said, of course, big shot, Why, certainly. She said it took 12 years for me to be convinced that you were serious about staying sober. I'd seen you on your good behavior many times before. The next day I flew back to Brownwood, Texas, and the day following the phone rings and it's my son Johnny, and I said, what's up? What's wrong? And he said, oh, no. No, he said, Dad, I'm getting ready to go to college. And I said, yeah, I know it. We talked about it. Why have you decided to go? He missed the Olympic team as a swimmer that went to Mexico City by the slightest of fraction. And he taught swimming back there every summer. So I said, where are you going? And he said, I got a lot of offers of scholarships, but I'd like to come out in AU. A fellow who hadn't had a father for 15 years. And I said, what does Mother say? And he said, why don't you ask her? She's right here. And she took the phone, and I said, what is this? And I still wanted to be right. What is this? She said, yes, don't you think it's time that your son came to know the man that his mother loved and married? God, the next day I'm heading back to Maine again. And he and I drove back to Texas. God, I was proud to watch him register as a freshman, and I was very proud to see him when he was graduated, and I was proud to see him marry, and I was more proud when they presented me with a granddaughter on my natal birthday. But the priest was there for 2 years, and I'm drilling out in Holbrook, Arizona. We couldn't get the town of Holbrook. 14 miles away, because we had the trailer parked in between two buttes. Don't tell me that God don't act in many mysterious ways. We came in one afternoon, early, about 2:30, always stayed out tonight. And as we pulled into the trailer, I said, let's leave this phone on. Maybe somebody wants us, maybe that thing will come in out there. Joking. So we did, and I'm not in that trailer 2 minutes. And as true as I stand behind this podium tonight, ladies and gentlemen, my son was calling me from Belfast, Maine, when we could hardly get Holbrook 14 miles, and as clearly as I'm speaking to you now, he said, Dad, Mother passed away this noon. Will you please come home? I didn't know she was dying when she asked me to promise her to come. What got you in hell? And it was folks like you, just exactly like you, who made it possible for me to return to my home city, to stand beside my son at the graveside of his mother, once more a useful and a respectable man. My God, why shouldn't I come to Winston-Salem or anywhere else if I'm ever asked? Yes, I'm a great believer in prayer. And I think that the one that is most apropos to me is the prayer of the Indian that goes like so. O great Spirit, I hear your voice in the winds that breathes life into all the world. Hear me, I'm small and I am weak. I need your strength and your wisdom that you have hidden under every leaf and stone. Let me always walk with beauty, and my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my ears always sharp so that I will hear your voice, and make me wise so I will know what you have told my people. Make my hands always respect the things that you have made, and I seek this strength, O great Spirit, not to be greater than my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. My God, how many times we've been told, you're a good fellow, but you're your own worst enemy. Now, keep God at the steering wheel and don't use him as a spare tire. Don't try to defy and think you're believing at the same time if you want to stay sober. Say to yourself, how do I handle my sobriety? Now, in a few minutes, this is going to be the end of this beautiful gathering. And tomorrow morning and some tonight we'll be wending our ways to our respective homes. And I hope that we do so at peace with ourselves, at peace with our fellow man, and at peace with our God as we understand him. And I hope that you will remember this, that it's not so far from right to wrong, and the trail isn't hard to lose, because I've seen the time that I'd sell my horse to know which one to choose. Now there aren't any signs or guideposts up to keep you on the track, because wrong sometimes is white as drifted snow, and right oft times is black. Now I don't set up to be no judge of right or wrong in men, because I've missed the trail sometimes myself, and maybe I shall again. In closing, may I say, thank you, Willard. Thank you, Dave. I want to thank those who are responsible for inviting me here. And I know that as Dr. Bob and Bill and Dick and Ebby and the rest of the gang look down on this gathering, they're saying to you folks of North Carolina who has made it possible for this conference, well done. Keep going. Don't get discouraged. Keep trying to carry the message to that still suffering alcoholic. And thank God for the creation of those two beloved men, Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson, and that little fellow that found Bill on that November night, Ebby Thatcher. Thank you, and God bless everyone here.